Hey, good evening. Discussing the week 5 question, discussion question. Question is, now that we have seen that the French are going to be out of Vietnam, this week's question is, was a selection of, forgive me if I can not pronounce this correctly, No Dim Diem, which I'm going to call him DM for short, a good choice in light of the 1956 elections to take place? All right, and well, first we should look at Mr. DM, or I should say Dictator DM, is the way I look at him. But he was born in Vietnam. He fled the country. He fled the country to the U.S. during the French and Indochina War. He was against communism as well as French colonialism. The Geneva Conference in 1954 delegated DM as leader against the French wishes. They said that they didn't believe he was capable, and they thought he was mad. Come to find out they would be correct. Once in power, he completely refused to be the U.S.'s puppet. So against all their wishes, everything they were trying to suggest, because I mean he was pretty much pissing off the Vietnamese people on a regular basis. So U.S. People or personnel were trying to help guide him and make better decisions for the country, or at least the way they thought would be better for that country. And he didn't want to have any or hear anything they had to say. He wanted to do it his way. Um, but we'll get to that a little later. Um, Eventually, with time, the U.S. was very unhappy with his performance, but they felt like they had to support him because they kind of pushed him in there. And since he has such strong roots to the U.S., well, living in the U.S., they felt like he was very passionate against communism. He was a devout Catholic, so they thought he was going to bring in a U.S. type of government to this country, and in turn, he didn't really do any of that. So since they kind of pushed him into it, so they kind of put him in that power or in that position against other people's suggestions, they felt like they had to kind of defend him. They had to kind of stand up for him, hoping that in turn, he would actually listen to what they had to say. With time, he really started acting like a dictator. At least in my opinion, as I read about him, to me, he was very much like a dictator. He showed Buddhists, which is the largest, as 90% of the religion that was Buddhism, or practicing Buddhists. He showed him no respect whatsoever. He had him shot. I'm trying to remember the exact scenario. I read it just shortly, but I'm having a brain fart right now. He during I want to say the 2,500 something birthday of Buddha, a large gathering came outside, and he had the police take to the streets to try and get him off the streets, and they ended up opening fire in the crowd, ended up killing a woman and 8 children, I believe is what I read. So that caused a huge uproar in the large majority of the community. I mean, 90% of the community or of the country is practicing Buddhists, so I mean, you kind of just pissed off the larger portion of the country, and they definitely demonstrated that. And the biggest demonstration that really brought attention to the U.S. was I didn't write his name down, but a Buddhist actually went to one of the popular squares, I guess you could say, where there's a lot of people outside, and he literally soaked himself in oil. Well, him and his other Buddhist counterparts that were there. They soaked him in petrol and lit him on fire in front of everybody, and they were handing out pamphlets as he just burned. Apparently, he didn't make a noise, he didn't move, he didn't stop, he didn't even do anything. I find that absolutely, I mean, horrendous. I couldn't even imagine witnessing something like that. I can imagine that being, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, that's how upset he was. So that brought a lot of attention to the U.S. and eventually, President Kennedy was not feeling it anymore. He realized, this needed to stop. It was very evident that he wasn't gonna unite South Vietnam, and he wasn't gonna stop communism. In fact, he was probably pushing it more, perpetuating the issues within the country, making them kind of fight their rebel against their own government more. So the concern now was that the country would fall into communism. So the CIA provided a group of South Vietnamese generals $40,000 to carry out a coup to overthrow DM, and they promised that they wouldn't protect him. The reason why DM, there's already been all their attempts to assassinate and overthrow him, and the U.S. was pretty much his main support. The U.S. was what was keeping him alive. So once they said, yeah, you're on your own, buddy, he was pretty much done. So eventually that's what happened. Yeah, the generals ended up overthrowing. They ended up killing him. They told him they're going to give him a chance to leave the country, and in turn they're like, yeah, never mind, and they ended up shooting him. So the question you asked me. Was DM a good choice? Well, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. DM was an awful choice looking back at what we know now. But we gotta look at it from their point of view. At the time, he was young, he was cultured, he was ambitious, and he admired President Kennedy. He admired that the man was very intelligent. Um, he had ambitions to do great things for the country. He really thought that he was going to do great things for Vietnam. And and I can't really say any ways he did. I mean, I guess I don't know. I didn't really see anything. I didn't read anything that really showed me that he did anything great at all. Actually, it just seemed like he ended up becoming very. He kind of his ego got the best of him. So it seems like he came in there like he was gonna do things his way, and that was it. And being young and being ambitious, he wanted to show that he could be just as good as anybody else, if not better. And he went in there. He just didn't want to hear anybody, and he wanted to do things his way. And unfortunately, his closed-mindedness was ultimately the demise of him. He's he ended up dying. So it was definitely the demise of him. But at the time, it's hard to say. The U.S. was obviously concerned about a communist entity or a person, unstable person, uneducated person stepping in or something like that. So they thought that he would have been the best. And granted, they felt like they would be able to kind of manipulate him too. It's the way it seems like, anyways. They have an opportunity to control him. And when he kind of was like, "Yeah, it's not going to happen," I think that's when the U.S. was like, "Oh, like maybe the French were right. Maybe we made a mistake here." But at that point in time, it was too late. So these kind of questions like, was it a good choice in light of 1956? Well, it's hard to say. Yes and no. Who knows if he didn't go in there, what would have happened? But unfortunately, he said, hindsight's always 20/20. We know now that he was an awful choice, but it is what it is. That's what to say. Have a good one.